Thank you so much for joining me, Bidisha. I'm so excited to see you after such a long time. Such a pleasure to finally meet up with you and talk to you after all your millions and millions and millions of projects that you've been undertaking, and I've been watching from afar like a stalker. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction and then go straight into the questions. So Bidisha is a broadcaster, a journalist, a filmmaker, and a stills maker. Her latest publication is an essay called The Future of Serious Art, and as well as her film series, which is called Aurora. As a journalist and broadcaster, I think Bidisha specializes in a lot of areas, so including international human rights, social justice, arts, culture, feminism, political analysis, arts critique, and cultural diplomacy. And she ties all these different aspects together in her work. She also writes for all the main UK broadsheet newspapers, including The Observer and The Guardian, as well as presenting and commentating for major news, so BBC TV and radio, ITN, CNN, Viacom, CBS and Sky News. And her fifth book came out in 2015, and it was Asylum and Exile, Hidden Voices, and is actually based on her outreach work in UK prisons, refugee charities, and detention centres. And her short film that was released in March 2018, An Impossible Poison, actually premiered in London, and it's been highly critically acclaimed and selected for numerous international film festivals, which is incredible. She's one of a number of contributors to the 2022 release of Dangerous Women, which is co-edited by Professor Joe Shaw. So without further ado, thank you so much. So I've got to ask, Bidisha, like, what brought you to the Dangerous Women project in the first place?
I've been a campaigner against male violence against women and girls for the entirety of my career. So I've written and spoken about these issues. Dangerous Women, the project, initially started off as a university-based project with a lot of academics, but because I've written essays about this issue, I was approached to contribute to it because I wrote a few years ago a very personal essay called Emotional Violence and Social Power, and it was about the way that abusive perpetrators often have a split between their public image and what they're like in terms of their interpersonal relationships. So you so often see rapists, murderers, family abusers who are actually pillars of society. So it's not just that they abuse and perpetrate against women and girls, and often men and boys as well. It's that they're endorsed, they're co-signed by the rest of society. So they say, well, I'm a businessman, I'm a human rights leader, I'm a prominent journalist, I'm a famous artist, I'm a good guy. It's like the stereotype of the nice guy that's actually an abusive boyfriend. It's a very common stereotype. So the essay was about those things. It was about sociopathic narcissism. And of course, as we know, because we work in the field, all perpetrators are really the same. They follow exactly the same playbook. The same kind of abuser dynamics are the ones that they use, but they wouldn't have any power at all if they weren't supported by the whole of society, by the police, by juries, by even charity workers, by commentators, holding the same beliefs in their heads around abuse, power, victim blaming, perpetrator excusal. That's why we're in the kind of societal mess that we're in, and we've been in for thousands of years. It's because bringing a perpetrator to justice is very difficult if everyone on all sides of the line is brought up in a misogynistic, woman-hating society and culture.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, you know, when you mentioned that, I just immediately, all those really famous examples of like Ted Bundy and people like that who had families still behaved in certain ways, exactly the same way. So yeah, absolutely. And in your own essay, you say, dangerous women are truth incarnate. So do you want to explain what that means?
It was inspired a little bit by the Me Too movement, because what the Me Too movement is, it's not about trying to get abusive men into prison or in front of a jury trial. It's a testimonial movement. So all that the women, victims, survivors, and witnesses have is our word. Me Too is about saying, this is what happened to me, this is my truth. And the truth is what you have when all other avenues have been completely exhausted. The truth is what you're left with when you tried to report your perpetrator to the police and it got nowhere. You tried to get justice and you tried to get them into prison. You tried to get someone to believe you and they still didn't believe you and nobody helped you. So when I say a dangerous woman is truth incarnate, what I mean is that just the power of truth and testimony and speaking up for yourself without shame or guilt or horror or fear, that's powerful in itself. And it's exactly what abusive perpetrators are afraid of. They are afraid of their victim or the witness of their abuses just opening their mouths and saying the truth about themselves, saying the truth about the perpetrators. That's why you have men who are accused of any kind of abuse misusing the legal system to try to threaten women with defamation suits and libel suits, even though they're guilty. Defamation is only defamation if you lie. Yeah. It's only a crime if you lie. It's not a crime if you told the truth about a perpetrator. But they will use anything in the world to stop people speaking out. So in that sense, the written word or the spoken word is incredibly powerful. In fact, the first thing that perpetrators say, including schoolyard bullies or office bullies, is don't tell anyone. This is our little secret, because they are so afraid of the truth getting out there. They're much more afraid of that than they are afraid of prison. Perpetrators aren't really afraid of prison. They're not really afraid of any of those things. They're afraid of the truth about themselves being known.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And what do you think is the impact of women being designated with this label of being dangerous or nasty, or, you know, there's all these, like, a lot of essays. There was the nasty woman essay as well, where, why do you think, I know that a lot of women are reclaiming it, but why do you think that, like, a lot of women are tarnished with it?
We live in a misogynistic society. That's a woman-hating society. But not just that, we live in a woman-hating, perpetrator-excusing society. So it's a woman-hating society that's also a man-worshipping society. And in a system like that, you have endless ways of diverting people's attention away from the perpetrators, who are overwhelmingly men and boys. And their victims are everyone, including men and boys. And instead, pointing the finger of blame at women. So whenever a man commits a crime, the finger of blame points at the woman, because it's as if collectively society cannot face the reality of how universal male violence against women and girls and men and boys really is. And so all of these side hustles spring up alongside that. And one of the side hustles of misogyny is coming up with endless words to insult women. So bitch, dangerous, whore, cow, nag, hag, babe, chick. I mean, they're all just words to demean women and dehumanize women. And it's all very obvious. You know, the fact that you can think of 100 million words to describe a woman who had more than 2 boyfriends, and you can't think of a single word to describe a man who's had more than 2 girlfriends. You know, even calling a man like that, you know, a gigolo or a fancy man, they're not really insulting. They're actually quite flattering terms, in fact. So dangerous woman is just another way of insulting women. And for me, the simple thing about misogyny is how obvious it is. So we don't need to overanalyze this. We don't need to say, oh, why is she dangerous? It's because if you tarnish a woman, calling someone a name is the first step towards dehumanization. It's the first in about 20 steps. And the last step is raping her and murdering her. The first step is calling her a name. So you don't call her by her own name. You call her by a generic hate word for women. But I also think there's some truth in it, that perpetrators are genuinely afraid of women telling the truth about them. The world is genuinely, truly, for real afraid of people like you and me just opening our mouths and saying what we've seen and heard and witnessed, or what our friends have gone through, or our mums or our sisters, or anything like that. And so I like the idea of being a dangerous woman. I wish I were dangerous. The rest of the world would behave a bit better around me if I was genuinely dangerous. But feeling powerful and being powerful are two different things. So it might feel very empowering to be like, I'm a dangerous, sexy, powerful woman. But at the end of the day, if a guy wanted to perpetrate against me on the street, if he was bigger and stronger than me, no amount of my self-defense classes would really help that. There'd be nothing I could do. So ultimately, perpetrators need to take responsibility for their own behavior. But the dangerous woman is like the mythical figure of what would happen if all of us just opened our mouths and spoke about what happened to us. And I do think there's genuinely power in that. I really do.
Yeah, no,
it's not a mirage or a fantasy in our minds that, oh, we're so powerful. No, I think it really is. That's why they try to keep women apart. That's why there's so many jokes about groups of women being together and what are they going to say? Yeah, we probably are going to talk about you. So, don't perpetrate and then we won't have anything to talk about.
It's like a witch's coven, isn't it?
I wish.
Yeah, right.
I wish.
I feel that's why they've called it a witch's coven, just because they didn't want women to talk to each other. Yeah. And actually, one thing I've noticed, because obviously there's like 50 different interpretations of dangerous women in the book. So why do you think there are so many different interpretations of being dangerous?
And that's a fantastic question, because I think the idea of the dangerous woman has changed throughout history. There's a really interesting essay in the book about biblical dangerous women. And one of them, of course, is Eve, who tempted Adam with all of her fruits of knowledge, which to me seems perfectly reasonable. Really, really reasonable. And then there's the dangerous woman who tempts men with other things like sexuality and the idea that dangerous women tempt men towards sin. But there's also a fantastic essay about militarization in women and how women are often radicalized by war.
Yeah.
And they're militarized by war because what happens in very fragile states, of course, as you know through your work, is once all the men have killed each other, the women have no choice but to take up arms. It's not something we want to do. It's not something that's natural. It's not something that should be a dilemma that anyone should ever have to have. But there's a great essay about the idea of the woman assassin. So a patriarchal society forces women to fight back in patriarchal ways, which are really truly unnatural. Whenever people talk about dangerous women, there's always some sort of wag on Twitter who says, but are women really non-violent? Are women truly the non-violent sex? And the answer is yes, we are truly the non-violent sex. We, generally speaking, even though of course there are outliers, obviously, generally speaking, we don't rape and murder.
No.
And that is a fact. Whether you want to say that or not, or acknowledge it or not, that is a fact and has been proven through 3,000 years of history. So the dangerous woman changes dimensions depending on the context. But what's really depressing is that no matter how many ways you interpret the phrase dangerous woman, you can't get aside from the fact that in the thousands of years of human history across the globe, there has never been space to interpret womanhood in another way, because we're all always living under patriarchies. There are very few cultures all over the globe that doesn't have a culture which is defined by male violence and male domination of women and girls and men and boys. The kind of the gender hierarchy always ends up being that. And I don't want to hear about the tiny tribe that you found that's like, it's got like 30 people in it and the women have loads of boyfriends. Yeah. I mean, I love that. Or like some, a special kind of orangutan where the ladies do the ladies do nothing and the men do all the work, because they clean the dishes and stuff. That's great, but generally speaking, danger is interpreted in a very patriarchal light.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so, okay, so how do we change this narrative of like stopping these ridiculous double standards and like how women are treated? Because obviously that's a massive question, but how do we do it? Because I know it's really hard from a female perspective, as you said, because it's not our fault. So it's like, how do we make the others do it?
Education. I mean, we all are born as babies that know nothing about the world whatsoever and can't distinguish or make any particular distinction between other babies of other kinds or other colors. We're all just rolling around together, and we learn everything about the world just from what's around us, from the input. Films, TV, culture, but also social values, family values. I'm a huge fan and supporter of healthy relationships counseling, counseling, education, but starting at nursery. How do you treat other children? I'm very much on the side of campaigners who are pointing out that things like pornography and filmed child abuse and that whole online world of sexualization, which really overlaps the world of perpetration and violation, it's all part of the same territory, should be looked at, and that all of the campaigners who 15 years ago were kind of dismissed as being prudes or harpies, or here are all the other insults we have against women, I think they were proven right. I think their concerns were proven exactly right. But this is all doable. I mean, what I'm saying isn't some sort of crazy impossibility. And I also just very much strongly believe that the existing laws that we have against harassment and violation and family abuse should be applied, and that you have juries and jurors and judges and police and support workers who, they don't just receive training, but they're in it. They're advocates for victims and survivors. They come from a different tranche of society where they see themselves almost as activists for justice, rather than having a 2-day course about how you should believe victims or whatever it is. They should be steeped in it. All these things are possible. We made the world that we live in now, and we could make another kind of world.
Yeah,
it is possible. I don't think that we should give in to hopelessness. I also want to see funding put back into all of these justice movements. Part of the reason rape conviction rates have collapsed is because of massive underfunding of victim support services and advocacy services, and undereducation of jurors and judges. And instead of us making deals with Saudi Arabia to buy military helicopters, we should put money into all of those things. It is possible. And it begins with education. So I am very, very in favor of all of these workshops about what is a healthy and correct relationship to have to your friends and peers and family and all of that stuff. And also just believing survivors and doing all the rest of it, which we've spoken about for many years now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Gosh, it's depressing that, our money is being shifted into completely pointless sort of endeavors, instead of really important educational, subjects and things like that, and life skills and general relationship skills and things like that. Absolutely agree. And do you think that also it applies to, for example, how to stop men harassing women in public spaces, spaces where women also want to inhabit? So like things like obviously actual public space, online work. What's your thoughts on that?
I am very much in favor of the current ad campaign that's going around, which is about men young guys challenging other guys who are sexually harassing women. I do think it's totally endemic. So for me, the sexual harassment began when I was 12 or so. And I think it's probably the same for all other women and girls, right? So it's that onset of puberty age. And I'm 43 and it hasn't ended. Really, it might change dimension, but the fact of the perpetration has never ended. And I've never been sexually harassed by the same perpetrator twice, except once. So the fact is that they're all different. All of the perpetrators are different every single time. So it's totally endemic from every corner of the world to every other corner of the world. It's not just about challenging the misogyny of the perpetrators, because they are woman haters. It's not flirtation. They haven't got it wrong. If they say, well, I'm just giving her a compliment, they're just lying. Whatever perpetrators say to excuse themselves, they're lying. Because they know when not to do it. They know not to do it in front of a police officer. They know not to do it in front of CCTV. They know not to do it in front of their own mother. They know when not to do it. So they're making a conscious choice every time to harass women. And you know that they're lying when they say, oh, I didn't realize it was harassment, because when you react negatively to it, they step it up. So they enjoy it. They are woman haters. They're sadists. They like harassing women in public, and it's because they hate women, or they wouldn't do it. Of course they enjoy it, or they wouldn't do it. And they are exactly the same men who abuse women, their daughters, their girlfriends, their wives, their sisters, in private. There's no special category of sexual harasser where, oh, he's a good husband, but he sexually harasses women. They're all exactly the same. They're all woman haters. And I'm in favor of the education around that, to not softball it. I don't have any sympathy for perpetrators whatsoever. But what you have to tell them is it's not okay. It's illegal. You're going to end up in prison for it, not being spoken to by a police officer who's smirking at you. You're going to actually end up in prison for it, because it's a crime. It's a crime of violation. It's violating a woman's peace of mind, physical space, and sense of safety.
Yeah.
It's absolutely on a par with any other kind of violation. It's the first step to any kind of violation. And that this is men's and boys' problem. It's not women and girls' problem. And they should challenge it in each other. So putting the onus right back on the perpetrator is exactly where it ought to be. And I don't want to hear anything about keeping women safe, because we have to think about that all the time.
Yeah.
Go home with our key chain around our knuckles. It's a load of rubbish. Oh. If you were actually attacked, you freeze. I don't want to hear anything about telling women what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. No, it's true.
The perpetrator should just stop. And the fact that they can't stop really says something about them.
Yeah, for sure. And, again, exactly. And I've heard some crazy stuff recently about possibly them making it illegal for people to hold their keys in their hands to attack someone. I was just like, oh God, that's really ridiculous. And it's not going to solve any problems at all. And but you mentioned something really important, which is, when you go to a police, you don't want a police officer, for example, to smirk and things like that. And then you mentioned, obviously, your own situation in the book, which was just so harrowing and, really horrible incident. And
I'm angry with myself for allowing myself to drink the poison on that one. I should have just killed the guy.
I'm like, symbolically, yeah, I totally. And the thing is, it's like, no blame or any judgment on you for what happened. It was terrible. But I was wondering, why do you think certain men will stand up for other men, even though they know they're clearly in the wrong? Like you were mentioning with the police officer smirking and stuff, knowing that it is wrong. So why do you think people do that?
They all hate women.
Do you think?
I don't think it's anything more or less than that. I think the problem is that if you report something to any authority figure, it may be that they have exactly the same beliefs and values as your perpetrator. It's nothing more than that. Never underestimate the latent misogyny of people. It's not that they actively all hate women, it's that they don't care. And they actively support perpetrators, again, probably latently. And that's the value of the society that we're in. And it's the same in the NHS, or it's the same in the police, or it's the same in schools. I mean, the sector that you're working in doesn't have any kind of automatic mitigation prophylactic against misogyny. It's everywhere you look, from the left to the right to the center, up, down, and sideways. And so even the doctor you go to, or the nurse who's looking out for you, might say something like, well, be more careful next time.
God.
Yeah, it's very common. It's very common to be told that. And they think they're giving well-meaning advice because, right, like I said right at the beginning, we don't just live in a woman-hating society. We live in a man-worshipping society. So the man is given the benefit of the doubt. He's given the legal protections. He's given all of the arguments in his favor. And many people do it, including ones who call themselves feminists.
They're the most dangerous.
Almost reflexively. I mean, when I was perpetrated against, I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew that no one would believe me. I knew that lots of women who call themselves feminists in public would freeze me out, which is exactly what happened.
Sad.
I knew that some did really heinous things, like turn around and kind of do something to help the perpetrator's career after sitting with me, hearing me talk about it in private, obviously. I knew all of those things were going to happen. It was quite shocking because I wrote about all of these issues throughout my career. And then the thing happened, exactly what I'd written about happened. I thought, wow, this is really super medieval. It's kind of classical that even other women are going to do this. I mean, they could have said nothing, but no, they actually went out to shill for the perpetrator, who got away with it, by the way. I mean, it's not like anything I did or said made any positive difference. As far as I know, he continues to perpetrate to this day. I mean, I turned journalist in all of this. And so by the time like 10 other women had contacted me, I was like, oh, you're not even a special victim. This is not special victims unit. This is unspecial victims unit. This is like, you got caught in an insurance scam. It was like finding out that you're one of like 200 people in the Bernie Madoff scandal.
Oh, God.
No, it was actually weirdly a relief. It was actually weirdly a relief because
Really?
I realized that yeah, because it meant that I didn't have a big sign saying I'm an idiot, kick me. I was like, oh, you just got unlucky. And also once you realize perpetrator dynamics, it doesn't happen again because you get very educated. So I don't really regret the self-education journey that I went on. I read all the books that you read, like Judith Herman, Bessel van der Kolk, Pete Walker, Sandra Hall. I mean, you know all of them, right? And it's actually very interesting.
Yeah.
So you grow as a person, and I have no idea I mean, I know that the perpetrator is still probably just abusing loads of other women.
This is the thing. It's just they will target people, and it's not that they're looking for something specific. They will just target anyone who is there, which is what's so dangerous. And it's like a kind of like a gravity force. Whoever's around, they'll just pull in and into it quite easily. So I've never seen it as like, it's not the woman's fault, obviously, clearly. It's just bad time, bad place to be in. And it's terrible.
It's bad luck.
It really is bad luck.
I was watching one of these YouTube videos about how to deal with tricky people, and the expert on there said something really useful, which is you should regard these people as natural disasters rather than anything else. So if you got rained on the street, you'd go, oh, this is gross, I'm all wet, let me get out of these wet clothes. And perpetrators who are strangers to you are the same thing. You should just say to yourself, oh, this is disgusting, let me get out of this situation, instead of entering a kind of psychic relationship with the perpetrator. This is not a soul war between you and the perpetrator. They don't have enough self-awareness to even think about any of those things. And as dehumanizing as it feels, we're not actually people to them.
No.
So
exactly.
the way that we this is why I'm so against women and girls like burning calories. I don't think we should use any of our calories on trying to figure out what's going through their minds, because they're not trying to figure out what's going through our minds. So actually, your perpetrator becomes your mental boyfriend. You know, if you had a nice boyfriend, you'd be like, what's he doing now? What's he thinking? What's he eating for lunch? And we do that to our perpetrators. Yeah. Because it's so shocking and horrific and awful that we're nice, normal, decent people. So we cannot believe
someone would do
that someone did that. We can't believe that someone would do, because we can't imagine ourselves doing it because we're people. Yeah. But actually, it's very liberating to say, dogs bite men. Men don't bite dogs.
Yes.
So, you know, we trod in garbage, and that's really bad for us, but it's also nothing to do with us whatsoever. And it's actually, I found it very liberating to read these books and realize that, oh, they're all the same. They're just garbage. And you know what you do with garbage? A lady skirts around garbage. And once you've had it happen enough times, you're like, oh, I can recognize the smell of garbage 20 paces away. And aren't I lucky that, you know, I got out of these dirty clothes? So there's a big journey to be had in all of that. And I'm not saying that to somehow excuse the perpetrator or any of those things, but actually the self-empowerment journey is the first step towards justice. And I have to say, I know this sounds really woo. I have never seen karma not happen, ever. Do you believe that?
I think, it always shows up in the way you least expect it. That's one thing I realized.
Yes. Yeah. Let go and I mean, I don't believe in God, but kind of let go and let go and let God is a really great phrase. Like you just go, I trust the, remember, karma is a lady and karma takes a little while because she's very busy, because there are lots of assholes in the world. But she does eventually get to her to-do list. And I totally agree with you. If you have the strength to let go of the rope, the other party falls over. Yeah. You know, in a tug of war, if you let go, the other party falls over. You think that if you keep pulling, you're going to win. Yeah. And exactly as you say, often in the most sort of outrageously weird, phantasmagoric ways, like cartoonish ways.
Yeah, for sure.
And karma works if you believe in it. So if you think we live in a hard, cold, loveless world where there's no justice, believe me, that will happen to you. If you believe that eventually the penny will drop and the other shoe will fall, I mean, I have so many examples, which this is public, so I can't say them, but it's really amazing how life works out. It really is. If you wait long enough, truly the weirdest, freakiest stuff happens. And you're like, oh, lady, karma complete.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. It is about you letting go. Sometimes we hold on for so long, you end up drinking the poison instead of giving
you
it to
drink
the
the
other
poison.
person.
It's called, the Chinese have a saying, it's drinking vinegar.
Exactly.
You're just doing it to yourself. And I don't like to drink vinegar. But maybe part of the recovery process is just drinking the vinegar at the beginning.
Yes.
Like we have to. And I don't think, and I am also emotionally rigorous. I actually believe in feeling your pain.
You must.
Like I want to feel my feelings, right? I want to go through the whole cycle of rage and pain and horror.
We can't be British about it. We can't be British about that stuff. No, definitely not.
I want to do all of those things and go through the entire cycle, because I'm not one of those people who's like, I just want to be happy. Actually, I want to feel all the feelings and come out the other end.
Yeah.
Maybe that's really Catholic. Like I believe in sin and guilt and I'm not Catholic at all, obviously, but sin, guilt, mortification, repenting, being cleansed with the righteous fire.
Yeah. No self-flagellation though. No self-flagellation.
No, I did all of that. I'm angry with myself for taking so long to kind of.
No. Time is like.
Yeah, because this guy was basically just a fuck. No, but this guy was basically just a fuck boy. It's not like I sort of. You can call it that, or you can call it being a narcissistic, sociopathic abuser. It's actually the same thing. When I spoke to my younger girlfriends, they were like, yeah, there's loads of assholes out there. I mean, they were very like, they were much stronger about it than me, but I don't like it when someone abuses women, not to me, not to others. So I don't just want to feel fine within myself. I don't like that he does it to multiple women.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what makes me angry. So I try to, I don't know.
It's why you try to fight it in the first place, so
yeah, exactly. I sort of couldn't let it happen to other women, and like no one listened to me anyway. So well done, Psycho, you got away with it.
Oh God, again, karma will come. So yes,
I hope so, and I have seen karma happen in the oddest ways. I mean, like strange accidents, weird financial scandals.
Exactly.
I mean, something that you could never predict, like a sort of an odd tropical disease that makes their ears fall off. I mean, like the strangest things that you got to laugh about it. And I do absolutely believe in natural justice if you believe in it.
Yes.
It works if you believe in it. It's like anything. It's like a magic spell or something.
Indeed. And we saw it today at the Oscars. Winky face.
Instant karma.
Winky face.
Instant karma.
Exactly. Instant karma. And I was wondering, okay, so having, we've already mentioned this, which is like, you think it's up to men, obviously, to do the work. So do you think men can do the work without women assisting them?
The thing that always gets me is that if you're talking about really serious family abuse, it's not like it happens just to women. Little boys witness it too. They know exactly what we're talking about. And I'm always very cognizant when we talk about these things in a public forum. It's not just women and girls who are sitting there keeping the secret. So actually, I think men and boys know exactly what we're talking about. If you asked a whole group of men and boys, have you ever witnessed or experienced male violence? All of their hands would go up. So they know what we're talking about. I don't know why they keep stum about it, but they don't need us to give them a learning curve. All of the ways that we learned about the world, partly through experience, but partly through reading all of these books on perpetration and trauma, those books are out there and they should go and read them.
Yeah.
And my message to men actually is really simple. I mean, I don't say to guys like, sign up to this, that, and the other. I say, okay, number one, be quiet, stop talking. We don't need you to editorialize. I don't want your opinion on any of this. And number two, just believe us when we're talking. We're not lying. We're not exaggerating. And number three, call it out in others when you see it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's very powerful. Peer pressure is extremely powerful. And if you get people when they're young enough, they do change and they do hear it, because people's brains are very plastic. Children's brains are very plastic. I don't believe that the boy primary schoolers who are reenacting rape-like scenarios against their girl classmates. They're not doing it because they consciously hate women.
No.
They're doing it because they saw it on their phone and they're replicating
it. Definitely.
They're aping, they're copying. And so that's the age at which you get them. And you say, no, this is not right. It's not normal. It's not proper. It's, look at this, this girl is crying. This because you did a bad thing to her. And there's ways of not doing that. So it's just an education process. It's not completely impossible. What I'm against is us women and girls tearing our hair out and exhausting ourselves and sort of begging to be treated like people, begging to be heard, trying to think of 100 ways to frame it. If I'm angry, will it come across? If I'm nice, will it come across? My whenever I have to kind of make an account of all of this, I'm like, look at the newspaper headlines. Don't bother me about any of this. It's nothing to do with me. If you want to talk about gender politics, look at who committed what crimes. That's on the headline of the newspaper every day. Every time you hear about, woman 37 killed in house fire,
all the time.
Man 41 arrested
every time.
And then there's a note saying police are not looking for other people. The man is not a threat to the public. We all read those papers. Men wrote those articles and policemen found the perpetrators. So we all know what we're talking about. I don't know why people don't say it. It's as if you can't acknowledge the elephant in the room because people will be embarrassed and offended, but we all know the elephant's there.
Yeah. Oh God, no, absolutely. It's so depressing. It's so depressing because it's so downplayed in certain areas, certain countries, I find, where like very, very extreme male violence in certain countries. Like, when I look at India and things like that, it's just completely like normalized.
It's the normalization. It shows I don't think that they think it's somehow inevitable, but there's a loss of faith and hope that happens. So part of the normalization is quite a despairing feeling of, well, we normalized it because it's as if we can't fight against it, but that's not true. It's not true.
Definitely.
The problem is also when you have these massive levels of inequality and education inequality. So you have a kind of high bourgeoisie middle class who have all the right values, and then you have these very literal under-resourced areas where there's no education, there's no schooling, you have very early marriage, you have no forum for this sort of debatesy ideas, you have no forum even for survivors to talk amongst themselves. And those are social issues which are very easily solved with infrastructure and investment in basic services and all of the other things. I mean, a lot of the answer. A lot of the answer is just putting money into leveling up, which I know is a very kind of UK Boris Johnson-y phrase, but at a global level, what we know for a fact is the more you have women enfranchised in schools, universities, families, societies, professions, some of that gender inequality index begins to level up. I mean, that doesn't mitigate against male violence and what perpetrators choose to do, but it's a stepping stone for advocating for yourself and advocating for others. And that's very measurable. It's not like this is some sort of terrible curse that we're all living under. These are kind of real world issues which are solvable with real world solutions. I mean, it feels despairing because nothing seems to change. So the headlines when we were growing up are the same as the headlines now. And that's like 30 or 40 years or 20 years.
We must keep hoping. This is one thing.
And keep advocating. Hoping. And also I do have faith in successive generations because they're just as passionate. They're angry about the right things.
Damn straight. Like those girls in Afghanistan who want to study, like,
they're amazing. I love those
To
girls.
them.
And also, I also think that the Taliban thought that, well, you know what, we can do Taliban Mark II and it's going to be like tabula rasa. Absolutely. And it's like, excuse me, these girls' mums fought you and got you out of here in the first place. I mean, there has been a progress. There is kind of institutional knowledge amongst women. And I love the solidarity between generations of women that you see in environments like that. There isn't this split. You saw it again with the Pan-Arab revolutions. You have grandmothers, mothers, and daughters who have all been revolutionaries at various points. They're all politically engaged. And I love that. I don't like this matricidal, I don't like my mother's generation kind of attitude at all. Kill the mother. It's very Freudian. It's very sort of
and also we wouldn't be here without that generation. That's the thing.
Exactly. I mean, my mother's incredibly politicized and very politically outspoken and active, and I don't know where the stereotype of the little old lady that's not political came from. I mean, it's just misogyny, isn't it? I mean, it's just ageist misogyny.
That's it.
It's exactly.
Same old thing. Just all the different variations of misogyny aimed at different groups, as per usual.
And that very powerful internalized misogyny. So kill the mother, even amongst young girls, it's self-misogyny.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there were a few essays actually in the book that does refer to, the different generations as well. Because I remember reading a sort of interesting one based in Turkey, where there was this very kind of ultra-Orthodox Muslim community where this woman who was, fully covered in her niqab, but was very much had studied chemical engineering in university. And it's so fascinating to hear like the point of view of this woman who says, but I still believe in teaching girls the important educational things and we shouldn't be just put aside. And that was very true. And so I was wondering, in the book, are there any other essays that really spoke to you?
I actually liked Nicola Sturgeon's introduction. She didn't write a very big, long essay about it, but what I liked is that the anthology connects together people like me who are really journalists and cultural diplomats, and then academics who are studying the representation of women socially and culturally. The idea of the dangerous woman is a lodestone throughout all world cultures. So if you read an ancient poem from anywhere in the world, like an Old Testament screed, or like a beautiful Persian poem or a song or an ancient Greek thing, they will always have the figure of the temptress or the dangerous woman or the unruly woman. So it shows how the figure of the woman you have to be afraid of hasn't really changed. And of course, thanks to the kind of feminist revisionism of history, we can now reclaim that and say, well, it's quite good to be the dangerous woman. I want to be the outcast. If society is like this, I'm okay with being an outcast. But it's important to engage 21st century women. And the reason I like the involvement of people like Nicola Sturgeon, that doesn't mean I share 100% of her politics, but she is not interested in being an academic about it. She's interested in saying, I wanted to do this and I faced lots of barriers of misogyny and all the rest of it, but I'm engaged in the political process nonetheless. And so while I absolutely believe in looking back, I also believe in just being a role model in the real world that we live in. The 21st century world of party politics, going on the media, talking about issues, trying to see your country through a pandemic, all the rest of it. It's very important because I'm actually not in favor of theorizing around things. I think that we should be worldly creatures. It's very easy to be a kind of privileged writer, thinker, academic, intellectual woman and essentially spend your time. Look, I mean, that's my bookshelf. That's the side of my study. If I wanted to, which I don't. Exactly. We could spend all our time in here thinking and saying all the right things, and we wouldn't actually have to fight. We wouldn't actually have to stand up and fight these kind of troglodyte trolls, woman haters, people sending us yucky messages or saying that we can't do something or that they won't vote for us because we're a woman and women shouldn't be in charge. If you involve 21st century politically active women who are in the mainstream, they stand up for all the ones who show up every day and fight the fight. I don't have the stomach for it. I'm very political. And I've been asked why I don't go into politics. And the answer is because it's a dirty game. And I can't play those.
No way.
I can fight hard, but not soft. I can't do this thing of showing up every day and kind of batting back ridiculous insults and challenges and giving myself a headache and burning 500 extra calories on top of the job I want to do. So anthologies about women in the world have to include women in the world. They have to include people like Nicola Sturgeon, role models who are not necessarily in the field of academia or journalism or literature. It's very easy to stay in this quite elite bubble, which is theoretical. You know, I want to hear from women scientists. I want to hear from women in all different industries. And I don't want anyone to drop out or lose faith or say, oh, well, the workplace is toxic. You know, what if you want to do what they're doing? I don't think we should all drop out and tend to our allotments until the world ends, because if we do, we create a vacuum for the Elon Musks and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world and the Jeff Bezoses to literally measure their rockets against each other. You know, literally measure their symbolic fallacies when any one of them could cure world hunger in half a day.
100%. You're so right. Like, we need women in the front line. Always. Nothing will change if we just sit here and just chat about, you know, this, that hypothetical. But unfortunately, those women, God, the thick skin they have to put on is just unflipping believable. Wow. Really tough.
They have to do a double job. One of the full-time jobs is fighting misogyny, and the other full-time job is the actual job they signed up for. So Ms. Woman who wants to be an engineer for BT just wants to be an engineer for BT, not that plus fighting the sexual harassment in the office or whatever. It doesn't have to be BT. So you need to just have a lot of thick skin and also a lot of energy, a lot of drive. And I don't think those are bad qualities. Having a brass neck, having a thick skin, being a good fighter, I actually think those are very laudable qualities. And maybe those women do better in the world than you and I, because we're feelers. We're not just thinkers, we're feelers. So I feel everything. I mean, I kind of feel other people's stuff as well. Even when it has nothing to do with them. When something bad happens, I feel like my reaction to things is kind of out of proportion to what's happening. I mean, it's correct, 100%. But it's kind of too big for what's happening. And that might be wonderful if I want to make an artwork, but it's not wonderful to live in all day, every day. And I wish that I was someone that doesn't internalize things, because fighting in the world requires that things bounce off you, not that you kind of absorb them all.
I can completely relate to that as an empath, as a HSP, highly sensitive person. I can't wash it. Like, I can't let it wash over me. I will just feel everything. So if someone is crying,
everyone's everything. If someone walks past me in the street, I can feel their stuff.
Like if someone cries, I will cry. It's just almost instant. If I watch anyone cry, I will cry. And it's so maddening sometimes, because you want to be able to do so much, but it's a different quality. I think I believe it serves a different purpose, having that level of empathy. It means that, you know, I think all together as a collective we can plug lots of different areas. Like, as an empath, as someone who is thick-skinned on the front line, we can all work together and create something still fairly powerful. On that happy note, very happy note, thank you so much for speaking with me. I know that we did cover a huge range of topics within a very short space of time, but I think Dangerous Women really kind of does talk about so much in these 50 like essays, really cross the spectrum of the human condition essentially, and human experience. So really wonderful to read your contribution to it as well, which is great. And thank you for speaking with me today.
Thank you. We've been fans of each other for a very long time. We ran into each other about 10 years ago. I cannot believe we left it for a decade, but we shouldn't leave it for another decade.
Definitely not. We definitely need to make sure we put something in a diary for sure.
Yeah, we will.
Awesome.